I've started streaming. I haven't turned the game on yet though. I believe I'm live now. Sherlock Holmes, consulting detective. Case 3, mystified murderess. Holmes' introduction.
London is not a beautiful city. Under the soot that covers its buildings is a teeming mass of 4 million souls trying to survive, mostly off of each other.
Hello?
You see it in the paper every day. Thankfully, we have the London Times to keep us informed of all these troubling activities with an unbiased eye, razor-sharp accuracy. We find this publication to be an invaluable assistance in our investigations, and I'm sure you will as well.
Did you say?
Among the forces of evil which run rampant in this city, there are also, thankfully, two groups of individuals who will aid us in our cause.
Okay.
As we do, they attempt to right wrongs and restore harmony and civility to the streets of London. The first of these groups is a ragtag association of young ruffians. I call them the Baker Street Irregulars. Don't let them fool you. They may be scruffy and ill-bred, but they are on the right side of the law. They can go everywhere, see everything, and overhear everyone. They are my eyes and ears in the streets of London, unquestionably a tremendous asset in our work. They will help us in our investigations if they can. The other group is a far more civilized collection of gentlemen and institutions.
Just about to stream as well.
I call them the Baker Street Regulars. They too will be extremely useful in our work.
Make a choice, Pete.
At the start of any investigation, do keep in mind that it is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Unwittingly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts. The people and places to whom I will now introduce you will help us to collect the facts. May we use them wisely. Come.
What do you want to do?
Well, I'm currently streaming right now. Seems a shame to stop now, doesn't it? What about you? What do you want to do? I suppose you can technically watch both.
Yeah, I could do.
Well, if you're going to watch both, tell Ollie I said hello. Sorry about my poor timing.
Or if we went over to his stream.
Or he could come over to mine.
And maybe we could stream this for a bit and then...
Yeah, maybe. See how far I get.
Society burglar strikes again. Series of burglaries. 6 over the period from June 2nd to June 17th. On July 2nd, the 7th occurred at the home of Sir Sanford Leeds. Cleopatra tiara stolen, it says. As in the other cases, no sign of extensive search by the thief, and only one piece of jewelry involved. Victims elsewhere at the time. Here's a complete list of the particulars, Holmes, if you'd care to read it.
What?
Is there a way to make the game full screen?
I'm afraid not, no. I did try. I think the picture's clear enough one way or the other though. No, I don't know why it's like that. Am I carrying on, or are you going to switch to Ollie's side?
I don't know.
I don't mind. I mean, I'm...
Thing is, I can't really listen to the game because then I'd hear an echo.
You could always mute my. You could always mute my microphone. Can I? If I muted my microphone,
But I'd hear myself if I was listening to the stream.
Oh. Well, what do you want to do then?
I might watch Ollie's stream,
Alright.
but I can still be here.
Yeah,
I can watch both.
Alright, well, tell Ollie I said hello.
How do you do, gentlemen? I am Gerald Locke.
Please be seated, Mr. Locke. How can we be of service?
3 days ago, Guy Clarendon was found murdered at Halliday's. It's
Ask him if he got that share
but
play
Miss
idea
Frances Nolan has been charged
working.
and is being detained at the criminal court, Old Bailey.
Frances Nolan.
Ask him
Ah,
what?
yes.
Ask him if that
Sister
share
of
play
Loretta
idea
Nolan.
worked out.
Only surviving heirs of Sir
Well,
Malcolm
if he
Nolan,
figured out
founder
how
of
to
the
get it
Aberdeen
to work.
Navigation Company.
I seem to recall that Sir Malcolm and Lady Nolan were killed when some lunatic threw a bomb into their carriage.
Ollie
Seems
says
to me
hello.
that later I
Oh.
heard something about it being a case of mistaken identity. Wasn't one of their little offspring
I
in
could do
the
it
carriage
myself,
with them
actually.
at
I've
the
got
time?
PlayStation
Yes,
4.
it was Loretta, Frances's sister. She was only 4. Miraculously, she was uninjured.
Mr. Locke, I've heard that you are a suitor for Miss Frances Nolan's hand, are you not?
Yes.
And was it not also true that she was being courted by Guy Clarendon?
Unfortunately, yes.
Have you any idea why Frances Nolan was charged with the crime?
Ah, well, she was discovered over the body with a pistol in her hand.
Fine.
Shit, was that
Hi, Mom. I'm alright. Yeah. 4:20. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't think so, no. They're gonna want to eat. So, sorry, what? Yeah.
Oh, you're watching.
Can't hear you properly.
Oh, you're watching Ollie's stream as well.
They're not. It's not on in the morning. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, 4:30 and 8:30. Sorry to hear that. You might not be that bad. Good.
Problem?
No.
8,000 experience each. Let's see how many times we level up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing right, mate.
Seems alright. Went out for fish and chips. No. Yeah. Alright. Okay, well. Alright. Love you. Bye. Bye. Okay, now where was I?
I think we're streaming. Ollie's stream.
Yes. No, we're not, because my... Wait, can you hear Ollie's stream on the YouTube?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I can hear it on your microphone.
Oh. That's irritating. Okay, gonna have to switch it off then.
Yeah.
Oh well, that was a... Or I could just switch microphones actually. Oh, can I? Hmm. No, I fear I cannot. Pete,
Goodbye.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
It appears I cannot switch my microphone over. Oh well.
What should we do then?
Well, I'm just going to solve this mystery here.
Okay.
That would do it.
But you don't understand. Francis...
Society burglar strikes again. Series of burglaries. 6 over the period from June 2nd to June 17th. On July 2nd, the 7th occurred at the home of Sir Sanford Leeds. Cleopatra tiara stolen, it says. As in the other cases, no sign of extensive search by the thief, and only one piece of jewelry involved. Victims elsewhere at the time. Here's a complete list of the particulars, Holmes, if you'd care to read it.
I know it's not...
Find them in the study.
I know
How
it's
do you
not
do,
Final
gentlemen?
Fantasy, Pete,
I
but
am Gerald
I do
Locke.
find this
Please
fascinating.
be seated, Mr. Locke. How can we be of service?
3 days ago, Guy Clarendon was found murdered at Halliday's. It's preposterous, but Miss Frances Nolan has been charged and is being detained at the criminal court, Old Bailey.
Frances Nolan. Ah, yes. Sister of Loretta Nolan. Only surviving heirs of Sir Malcolm Nolan, founder of the Aberdeen Navigation Company.
I seem to recall that Sir Malcolm and Lady Nolan were killed when some lunatic threw a bomb into their carriage. It seems to me that later I heard something about it being a case of mistaken identity. Wasn't one of their little offspring in the carriage with them at the time?
Yes, it was Loretta, Frances's sister. She was only 4. Miraculously, she was uninjured.
Mr. Locke, I've heard that you are a suitor for Miss Frances Nolan's hand, are you not?
Yes.
And was it not also true that she was being courted by Guy Clarendon?
Unfortunately, yes.
Have you any idea why Frances Nolan was charged with the crime?
Well, she was discovered over the body with a pistol in her hand.
That would do it.
But you don't understand. Frances is totally incapable of murder. Not even of a scoundrel such as Guy Clarendon.
Scoundrel? But he's from such blue blood. Also, if I'm not mistaken, he's an accomplished batsman for the West London Cricketers, a ranked fencer in international competition.
He was also a bit of a bounder, Watson.
What an understatement. Guy Clarendon was excessively fond of cards and strong drink. His father had all but disinherited him. I tried to tell Frances that Clarendon was no good, but to no avail. And now look at the mess she's in. Will you help?
Most certainly.
Thing is, Seb, is that I got a new subscriber today, so I think that's cause for celebration, you know?
Oh, Seb here.
Seb? Where? What?
You said, were you talking to Seb?
No, I thought I said you. I'm talking to
You
you.
said Seb.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, losing my mind. Oh yeah, I've got another subscriber, so I think that's cause for celebration.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, let's see if I can do this better than the last one. Where to start? Where to start? Gerald Locke visited the detectives at Baker Street, beseeching Holmes to look into the murder of Guy Clarendon at Halliday's private hotel. He believes that Frances Nolan, the woman being held at Old Bailey, could not have possibly committed the crime. A visit to the scene of the murder at Halliday's private hotel should raise some concerns regarding the evidence, as well as some of the eyewitness testimony.
Jack, I think I'm gonna have to go.
Alright, Pete. Nice of you to come by.
Right, see you on Saturday.
See you on Saturday. Yeah, just us now then, eh?
Clarendon, poor chap.
Hi Dad, love you.
He arrived on the 29th day of May and was given a front room on the 3rd floor. 2 days later, he asked to be moved to suite 205.
To your knowledge, did he have any visitors?
Only 2 that I'm aware of. One was a most disagreeable fellow. He was rather large, had a thick walrus moustache, and a very prominent scar down his cheek. He arrived on the 1st of June, the very day of Mr. Clarendon's move. He simply came in, sat down in the lobby, and waited. 20 minutes or so later, Mr. Clarendon came down from his room. The big man yanked him aside. I was about to send for a bobby when Mr. Clarendon signed me that all was well. After a few minutes, they left together. I never saw the man again. His other visitor, who came by quite frequently, was a most striking woman. She was quite fashionably dressed. She had a most distinctive laugh, very full and deep. I've no idea who she was.
Please, tell us about the morning of July 2nd.
It was about 9 o'clock when a woman entered. She was rather plain-looking, and I wouldn't have noticed her, except for the fact that she came in the front door, looking neither left nor right, and proceeded directly up the staircase. It couldn't have been more than 30 seconds later when I heard a bang, followed by a woman's scream. I dashed upstairs to the 2nd floor. The door to room 205 was open. Inside, I found the body of Mr. Clarendon and the woman who'd just come up. She was lying in a swoon in the center of the room with a pistol in her hand. I revived her with some whiskey. When she came to, she was totally disoriented. She had no idea where she was or what she'd done. When she saw Clarendon's body, she let out a shriek and dropped the pistol. I summoned the police.
Tell me, at what hour are the hotel's front doors locked?
Hello.
10 o'clock, sir. Anyone who arrives after that has to be let in by the night staff. Of course, Mr. Clarendon was never one of those. He was always in his room before 10.
Interesting.
May we see his room?
5 minutes later.
What have we here, Watson? Appears to be a bank statement.
Look here, Holmes. Appears the maid missed a spot in her sweeping.
Good thing she did, Watson. You're staring at evidence.
Blood.
What's this stain here?
No wonder she missed it.
Smells like a fine sherry. Looks like someone's been celebrating.
Question is, was it with the body or over it?
Nothing much here. Couple of shirts and 3 pair of shoes.
But what you failed to notice, my dear Watson, is that one of the pairs of shoes is canvas and has been dyed black. Interesting. A sweater and trousers. An ensemble in black.
Not much of a view. All I can see is a brick wall of the building across the alley.
Ivy vines binding up a trellis.
Interesting. At Halliday's private hotel, the man discovered that Clarendon had 3 visitors, a large man who accosted him, a beautiful woman with a distinct laugh, and a plain woman found over his body in the room. They found some black clothes and a bank statement. Let's see what's in the Times. Working Men's Vigilance Committee? Thought we could probably stand for a bit more recent, actually. Jack the Ripper. Whitechapel visited again by Jack the Ripper. Wonder what Ryden's been up to. Yes, I gathered that. Just wondering who to see next. A barrister? I wonder if...
I understand that Wilfred Robards is considering taking Miss Nolan's case. He might be able to help you. If you'd like, I can arrange an interview with Frances Nolan. She's being held downstairs, you know.
We might be able to help you, Miss Nolan, if you could just remember what happened that night in Mr. Clarendon's room.
Well, that's just the trouble. I can't remember anything except seeing Guy's body across the room and the pistol in my hand.
Where did you get the pistol?
I've no idea, though the police assure me it's mine. I didn't know Guy was at Halliday's. I've never even been there before. And why would I shoot him anyway? We loved each other.
There, Miss Nolan. Stiff upper lip.
Thank you.
Miss Nolan, what is the last thing you remember before the room at Halliday's?
Oh, hot cocoa in bed.
Beg your pardon?
Well, every night before I retire, my maid, Grace, brings me a cup of hot cocoa.
How nice.
Yes.
And before that?
Well, before that, I dine with Dr. Trevelyan, as I do every Sunday evening. My sister Loretta is under his care. The doctor and I have become good friends over the years. He left at 10 o'clock, as he always does.
May I ask, where did you first meet Guy Clarendon?
The country estate of Cornelius Oldwine, in March. My sister Loretta was attending a party there. I suppose things got a bit out of hand because it seems she dived into a fountain. She caught pneumonia and I had to go and fetch her home. Guy was also at the estate, and that's where we met.
And he immediately began paying court to you?
Oh, heavens, no. Nobody seems to take much notice of me. I suppose that comes from having such a wildly attractive sister. That's why I was so surprised when he called a few weeks later. We began seeing a great deal of each other. We went on long carriage rides, had picnic lunches. It was all quite lovely.
Sounds lovely.
And then on the 5th of June, he declared his love for me and asked for my hand in marriage. I was so happy. I couldn't have killed him.
How do you explain your presence at Halliday's?
Well, I can't. It's just like the other 2 times.
You've had memory losses before.
Yes, twice in the past month. The first time I found myself atop a horse in Hyde Park, with no recollection of how I got there. The last thing I remember was having lunch with my sister Loretta. Then there I was, atop a chestnut mare.
How peculiar.
The funny thing is, I'm terrified of horses.
You mentioned there was a second time.
Yes, a few days later, I met with my solicitor, Hiram Davenport. Then the next thing I know, I'm at the Newgate Street station. I consulted my physician, Dr. Mason, and he was quite as baffled as I was.
One last question, if you will. What is your relationship with Gerald Locke?
Oh, Jerry. He's a dear old friend. Though I'm afraid we had a falling out of late. He said some very unkind words about Guy.
The Mesmer Braid Institute was founded in 1874 as an asylum for the mentally disturbed. Oh, perhaps she's a bit of a loony.
Quite so.
The institute was named after the 17th century Austrian physician Anton Mesmer, who first discovered a technique whereby he could induce a quiet, trance-like state in patients.
Sounds suspiciously like hypnosis.
Actually, he called it mesmerism. It says that he ascribed certain mystic qualities to his process, and so was largely discredited during his lifetime. In the 1840s, Dr. James Braid, an Englishman, became interested in Mesmer's work, refined the process, and renamed it hypnotism. Right you are, Holmes.
Hypnotism, eh? Let's see Sir Jasper meet while we're on that page.
You're quite sure the murder weapon was a small caliber pistol?
Quite. I'd also wager to say he'd been shot at very close range.
Ghastly.
Tell us, Sir Jasper, at what time did you receive the body?
Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
And how much time would you judge to have elapsed from the time of the murder?
Well, it's always difficult to be precise in these matters, but I'd venture to say he'd been dead anywhere from 4 to 10 hours.
Interesting. Criminologist.
I say, excuse me, Dr. Murray.
Hello, what? Oh, my, I must have dozed off. Ah, it's you, Whitson. And what are you doing with yourself this afternoon? Or is it evening already? Have I missed my tea?
It's Watson, sir. We're looking into the Clarendon case, and we were wondering...
Clarendon! Ah, I just finished that report when I dozed off. Let me see. Number 301, I believe. Ah, yes. Here it is. Number 103. Clarendon, Guy. Not much, I'm afraid. A hole in the shirt where a small caliber bullet passed into the body. Extensive blood stains. Powder burns indicating a close-range shot. Ah, here's something interesting. On the lower part of the shirt, I found traces of alcohol. Wine, to be exact. Now, I have a good nose for this sort of thing, and I believe it to be an inferior quality Italian red.
Italian red, eh? Gives me something to think about. Last time I did this, I wasn't particularly very good at it. I think I might attribute that to possible fatigue. I wonder if I can think better with this one. Let's check the notes.
Both Loretta Nolan and Guy Clarendon have had several complaints filed against them, although neither of them has ever been arrested. Both have been cited for public drunkenness. Likewise, both have been involved in some unusual pranks, but no one has ever pressed charges.
I'm just searching through these, seeing if I can find something interesting. If they were in public areas, gossip might give some information.
It appears as though Guy and Loretta, the terrible twins, will afflict us no more. Loretta must be desolate, what with the loss of a kindred spirit and fellow prankster.
Prankster?
Well, yes, my good fellow. I'll never forget the time Clarendon poured champagne down the front of Lady Leeds's new Paris gown for the sole purpose of Loretta's amusement.
I would think she must also be distraught at the loss of her lover, not to mention the imprisonment of her sister.
Well, I'm not sure about Loretta's feelings toward her sister, but I do know that Guy and Loretta were not lovers. Though outwardly they made an excellent couple, he, tall, handsome, and from a moneyed family, and she, beautiful, and an heiress in her own right. Yes, it would have been a match made in heaven. But it was a match made in far hotter regions, I suspect.
Francis claims that she and Clarendon were engaged to be married.
Well, that's hard to imagine, him being who he is. Or was, as it were.
Why do you say that?
Well, Guy Clarendon was not at all a desirable sort. He'd all but been disowned by his own father for his compulsive gambling. The utter disregard for other people's money is probably what drew Clarendon and Loretta Nolan together in the first place. After all, she had managed to fritter away almost her entire fortune, unlike her sister Frances, who still had her inheritance, if not her honor, intact.
Oh, that explains it.
What are you driving at, Holmes?
From all I've heard of Clarendon, I suspect his interest in Frances was directed toward her sizable bank account.
Interesting. Yes, doesn't sound like a particular sainted individual. What kind of name is Porky?
Sure, I remember Clarendon. He and his lady friend used to stop in here from time to time, usually on their way to Kilgore's gaming parlor or coming back from it. Rumor has it, Clarendon was into Kilgore for a sizable sum.
Do you happen to know how much?
£7,000 was the figure I heard. Got to the point Kilgore wouldn't allow him in the door. Clarendon made a big fuss till Gus Bullock stepped in. Clarendon backed down pretty quick. Don't blame him none. Nobody in their right mind would want to mess with the likes of Gus.
Do you think Bullock was involved in the murder?
Nothing you could tell me about that bloke would surprise me. Anyways, Kilgore makes it clear to Clarendon that he wants his money. Then, a month or so later, Clarendon comes in all smiles, and he and Kilgore getting on like chums. Figure Clarendon must have paid him back. Then, Calvin Leach steps into the picture.
Now, who's Calvin Leach?
Leach deals in what you might call stolen property. Square dealer, too. Give you one half the value of the article.
He is a
What does
thief.
Leech have to do with Clarendon and Kilgore?
Usually nothing at all. But there it is. Leech, Kilgore, and Clarendon meeting late at night just as thick as thieves. The meetings continued on right up to, well, the night before Clarendon's death.
Very interesting.
Now, we've been standing here jawing, and I don't recall hearing anybody order nothing. What'll it be, mate?
I ordered information. You have delivered excellently. I, however, will not pay you. Sherlock can pay you.
It seems Sir Malcolm left his entire estate to his wife Margaret. If she should precede him in death...
Or accompany him, as proved to be the case.
Yes. Then the estate was to be equally divided between his two daughters, Frances and Loretta. The estate included a 1/3 share in the Aberdeen Navigation Company.
I wonder if Leech might be the society burglar. Times could provide the answer to that. Society burglar still at large. Lady Leech. Is that someone I can talk to, I wonder?
The tiara was a terribly valuable piece of jewelry, and it meant so much to my wife. She has been under a doctor's care since the theft. In fact, just yesterday she took a room at the hospital.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Is she prone to bouts of nervousness?
Perhaps lately it seems so. She was absolutely undone when young Clarendon poured champagne down the borders of her gown at Richmond's party. Come to think of it, that was the last time she wore her tiara. She was so proud of it. And several of the ladies at that party admired it openly.
Where did Lady Leeds keep the tiara when she wasn't wearing it?
In the bottom drawer of her bureau, where she kept some of her more frilly undergarments.
Were there any signs of a search? Drawers left open, that sort of thing?
No, and that's what strikes me as so peculiar. It's as if the burglar knew right where to look.
Strange. Okay, that's definitely a connection. Most assuredly a connection. Sorry, just looking at that at random. Just for the fun of it, maybe I'll send in a regular. Why were the police near him? It's interesting. Could it be that they know something I don't?
Well, it was an unfortunate event, but to tell you the truth, To me, it was a mere bauble, a trinket. I had it replaced for my wife the very next day.
And nothing else was stolen?
Not a thing, and it appeared there'd been no search.
Oh, I wonder if there are any other victims I could find. Nothing there. Burglary cease. Don't think it's the burglar we're looking for. Seven victims. Ah, that's what our bacon meant. Hardinge. Sure, we're on a roll here somewhere.
My wife and I were guests at a small dinner party at the home of Otis Richmond. We arrived home sometime after midnight, and as my wife was putting away her finery, she noticed the bracelet was missing from her jewelry box, and we summoned the police immediately.
The servants were questioned?
Oh, they've all been with us for a number of years, and I haven't the slightest suspicion about them. But yes, the police did question them thoroughly. All were in bed asleep by the time we arrived home, and none heard anything untoward.
And nothing else was taken?
Surprisingly not.
Yet you are positive that the bracelet has not simply been misplaced?
No, my wife actually put it on while she was preparing for the evening, and then she decided against it. I saw her put it back in the box.
Where does she keep the box?
In her dressing table, there's a special compartment in the side of it. The box fits in rather neatly.
So, the thief knew where to look for that. That's impressive. Who's this? What about this Otis Richmond? So we pay him a visit.
At first, I thought it must have been one of the servants. After all, there was no sign of a search, and nothing else was disturbed.
Did you question them?
Thoroughly, but none of them would admit a thing. It really wasn't until Hardinge and Bessie Dirth were robbed, and the newspapers referred to us as victims of the society burglar, that I was certain it wasn't any of my staff. By the way, can you recommend a good housekeeper and valet?
No. I'm afraid I cannot. I mean, I search for cleaners on a website called Made to Clean, but I know you don't have the internet, so can't help you. I looked at the newspaper clippings. I believe there was a Diarth. Thought that was strange because I thought it was Darth Vader or something. Let's see. Bessie Diarth.
My husband, God rest his soul, gave me that necklace for our 50th wedding anniversary. And woe betide the blighter that took it, I say.
I can certainly understand your consternation, madam. May I assume that you were out the evening it was taken?
Oh, yes, the house was completely empty. Sybil, my housekeeper, and I were attending the mass charity ball at St. Mary's for the benefit of unwed mothers. It wouldn't surprise me if that scoundrel was responsible in that direction as well. Society burglar, indeed. He's of the lower classes, mark my words.
Do you keep your jewels locked up?
Oh, I keep them in a very secret place. A box made to look like a copy of Great Expectations on the bookshelf amidst the other books.
Well, someone
Hiram,
did.
my late husband, thought of that. But the thief went right to it.
Well, apparently he had great expectations. Or she. Who knows? Oh, there was another person on that list. Nancy Judd. Was it Judd? Wrong one. Judd. I think this might be the last one of the burglary victims.
It's all quite upsetting, you know. The pendant belonged to my great-great-grandmother, and I was hoping to pass it on to my daughter. And now it's gone.
There, Mrs. Judd, you mustn't worry. With Holmes and I on the case, we're sure to recover your pendant. By the way, where did you keep it when you weren't wearing it?
In the toe of my old black button-ups. And I don't recall ever having mentioned that to anyone. Or at least I don't think I did.
You don't think you did? Well, with respect, you must have done. How else would someone know? Perhaps we should have a chat with the person who put us on this case.
We have just a few more questions for you, Mr. Locke, if you don't mind.
Of course not. Anything to help Francis.
We were wondering if you could shed some light on Miss Frances' relationship with Guy Clarendon.
He was only after her money. I tried to tell Frances as much, but she wouldn't hear of it. We had a bit of a row over it. I've been quite upset about the whole thing.
Upset enough to commit murder?
What an outrageous accusation.
There's any question, Mr. Locke.
Preposterous. Besides, I've been on holiday all week, playing cribbage at the annual tournament up at Leeds.
Sounds positively riveting.
Oh, it was.
It was it? Huh.
This is a difficult thing for a man to say about his only son. But Guy was a wastrel and a ne'er-do-well. Only a short month or so ago, I gave him £5,000 and told him that was the last he'd see of my money. I'd hoped the shock would bring the boy around, make him realize he had to settle down, instead of wasting his life on gambling and gallivanting around with that wild woman.
Which wild woman was that?
Loretta Nolan, of course.
You mentioned gambling, Sir Francis. Have you any idea with whom he gambled or who might have wanted to kill him?
I wish I did. He told us nothing. He only came around when he needed money. When I told him there'd be no more, we never saw him. Just about broke his mother's heart.
That's sad.
There, Gertie. We still have one another.
Poor woman.
I've something you ought to know about Master Guy. One morning, rather early, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I heard a terrible clatter downstairs, so I came down to investigate. It was Master Guy just coming home. He was in a terrible state, all battered and bruised, with a fresh cut on his forehead. I asked him who did it to him, and he wouldn't say. I think he was afraid for his life.
Interesting. Let's try the hotel again.
Clarendon? Poor chap. He arrived on the 29th day of May and was given a front room on the 3rd floor. 2 days later, he asked to be moved to suite 205.
To your knowledge, did he have any visitors?
Only 2 that I'm aware of. One was a most disagreeable fellow. He was rather large, had a thick walrus moustache, and a very prominent scar down his cheek. He arrived on the 1st of June, the very day of Mr. Clarendon's move. He simply came in, sat down in the lobby, and waited. 20 minutes or so later, Mr. Clarendon came down from his room. The big man yanked him aside. I was about to send for a bobby when Mr. Clarendon signed me that all was well. After a few minutes, they left together. I never saw the man again. His other visitor, who came by quite frequently, was a most striking woman. She was quite fashionably dressed. She had a most distinctive laugh, very full and deep. I've no idea who she was.
Please, tell us about the morning of July 2nd.
It was about 9 o'clock when a woman entered. She was rather plain-looking, and I wouldn't have noticed her, except for the fact that she came in the front door, looking neither left nor right, and proceeded directly up the staircase. It couldn't have been more than 30 seconds later when I heard a bang, followed by a woman's scream. I dashed upstairs to the 2nd floor. The door to room 205 was open. Inside, I found the body of Mr. Clarendon and the woman who'd just come up. She was lying in a swoon in the center of the room.
This part we already know. I felt I needed to be reminded of something. Not entirely sure what.
Tell us, who was at home on the evening of the 1st?
Well, just Miss Frances, sir. Oh, yes, of course, and Dr. Trevelyan.
What time did the doctor take his leave?
Oh, let me think. It must have been 10 o'clock, because that's what time he always leaves.
What did Miss Frances do after her guest left?
What she does every evening, sir. Well, she asked for a cup of hot cocoa, which I brought her straight away. Then she read for a bit by the fire. Later, when I went up to bed, I passed her room, and the light went out.
What time would that have been?
Oh, let me see. Oh, I know it was 11:30 because the clock chimed. Then I went to sleep. Later, I was awakened in the middle of the night, right in the midst of the most peculiar dream. You see, I was barefoot and trying to buy a pair of shoes,
As fascinating as all this is, could we get back to what it was that awakened you?
Oh, yes, of course. Well, it was something that I heard, or thought I heard. I listened for a bit, but that was the end of it, so I went to sleep again. Later, I awoke at 7:30. I always wake up at 7:30, except, of course, on Sundays when I sleep until 8. As usual, I began to prepare Miss Frances's breakfast. I had no sooner gotten to the kitchen when I heard the front door open and close. Well, I ran to the front window and peeked out, and there was Miss Frances walking down the street.
And why do you deem that so unusual?
Well, she never leaves before she's eaten one of my currant buns.
Not exactly a motive for murder, lack of currant buns. Although I'm sure her currant buns are lovely. Oh, I wonder what she has to say about all this.
Enter and be recognized. Oh, you don't wish to play Her Majesty, eh? Very well.
You do not seem particularly disturbed by the recent turn of events, Miss Nolan.
Each of us grieves in his own way, Mr. Holmes.
It must be difficult for you to face the possibility that your own sister may have killed your dearest chum.
Guy was fun to be with. And as for Frances, I love her dearly, but, well, it's funny to think Miss Right and Proper has finally gotten herself into a bit of a jam.
Miss Nolan, may I ask, when was the last time you saw Guy Clarendon?
Let me think. I believe it was the Richmond's party last Thursday. Yes, I'm sure of it. God, we did cut it up a bit there.
And after the party?
We did not go home together, if that's what you're implying. That would have broken Frances's heart. She was head over heels for Guy, you know. She had some foolish notion that he was going to marry her. Not that someone like him ever would. But I do recall her saying, and it might have been the night of his death, that she was going to have a talk with him about their future.
Okay. Well, lack thereof, it would seem. I remember hearing about a doctor. Dr. Percy Trevelyan. Well, he's apparently the one I read about in the library, so let's have a talk with him.
Doctor, we understand that you dined with Frances Nolan on the evening of July 1st.
Yes, that is correct. We dine every Sunday. Her sister Loretta has been under my care for some 10 years. First at the Mesmer Braid Institute and then in private practice.
Without breaching physician-patient protocol, would you mind telling us the nature of her illness?
She never quite recovered from the overwhelming trauma of watching her parents being blown to bits.
I quite understand.
As is often the case with young orphans, they tend to create fantasies about their parents. Miss Loretta Nolan truly believes that her father was the King of England, making her a princess.
Do you think her unconventional behavior stems from that fantasy?
Absolutely. As a princess, she believes she can do no wrong. I must say that she's worlds apart from her sister Frances.
Do you know Frances Nolan well?
Yes, rather. Through my treatment of her sister, I've known her for years. Let me say that it is difficult to believe that Miss Frances is capable of murder. She has a quiet, unassuming personality. An act of such direct confrontation would not be at all in keeping with her character.
Were Loretta and Frances close?
I know without a doubt that Miss Frances loves and cares for her sister almost as a parent would a child. Miss Loretta, well, she loves her sister as much as she is capable of love.
Oh, how sad. Nothing on file. I wonder if I've overlooked something. Dr. Mason. Yes, I thought that's where I saw his name before.
Tell us, Dr. Mason, have you determined the cause of Francis Nolan's blackouts?
It's the strangest thing, really. But I examined her thoroughly and found nothing physically wrong. She could not recall receiving a bump in the head, nor did she complain of dizziness. All I could suggest that was perhaps she was overtired and prescribed rest. It remains a complete mystery to me.
Oh. Something I remember from a fountain. If you're watching this, I hope you're not bored. From my memory, I do have to make these. I do have to refresh myself occasionally. Refresh my memory. I wonder if the what was his name again? Wondering what that columnist had to say.
It appears as though Guy and Loretta, the terrible twins, will afflict us no more.
I think there's something
Loretta
said
must be
about-
desolate, what with the loss of a kindred spirit and fellow prankster.
Prankster?
Well, yes, my good fellow. I'll never forget the time Clarendon poured champagne down the front of Lady Leeds's new Paris gown for the sole purpose of Loretta's amusement.
I would think she must also be distraught at the loss of her lover, not to mention the imprisonment of her sister.
Well, I'm not sure about Loretta's feelings toward her sister, but I do know that Guy and Loretta were not lovers. Though outwardly they made an excellent couple. He, tall, handsome, and from a moneyed family, and she, beautiful, and an heiress in her own right. Yes, it would have been a match made in heaven. But it was a match made in far hotter regions, I suspect.
Francis claims that she and Clarendon were engaged to be married.
Well, that's hard to imagine, him being who he is. Or was, as it were.
Why do you say that?
Well, Guy Clarendon was not at all a desirable sort. He'd all but been disowned by his own father for his compulsive gambling. The utter disregard for other people's money is probably what drew Clarendon and Loretta Nolan together in the first place. After all, she had managed to fritter away almost her entire fortune. unlike her sister Frances, who still had her inheritance, if not her honor, intact.
Oh, that explains it.
What are you driving at, Holmes?
From all I've heard of Clarendon, I suspect his interest in Frances was directed toward her sizable bank account.
Wasn't him, I was thinking of somebody else. What about their pranks? Wait, I just remembered. Fountain. There's a party. Yes, the pneumonia. Going on a hunch here.
Poor old guy. He could be such fun. I'll never forget what a jolly good time we had the night he climbed the fountain at my country estate.
How acrobatic.
You don't know the half of it. It all started with Loretta. It seemed those things always did. Anyway, someone dared her to jump into the fountain. It being March and quite chilly, no one actually thought she would. She did them on better. She jumped straight in and swam to the center, where I have this absolutely dreadful sculpture of a lot of fat water nymphs. It rises some 20 or 30 feet in the air. She climbed it, though. The woman must be part monkey. Then she dove in. After that, it seemed to be the thing to do, so everybody took the plunge. I was the only other one who actually climbed to the top of the fountain, though. By the end of the weekend, half my guests came down with sneezes. Loretta caught pneumonia.
Not surprised. Oops. I do believe Pike said something about gambling. At Kilgore's, was it? Let's have a look there.
Any luck?
Yes and no.
I beg your pardon.
Yes, Kilgore has met Clarendon once or twice, but no, he insists he's never heard of Calvin Leach.
And you believed him?
No. There was that guard. Was it Bullock?
Who are you and what do you want?
Dr. John Watson, sir. I wondered if you might be kind enough to answer a few questions.
About what?
Guy Clarendon.
That welching little weasel, what about him?
He's been murdered.
Ah! I'd say he got what he deserved. And if you don't clear out of here in 2 seconds, so will you!
Oh, quite. Ta-ta!
Deserved it for what? Let's flip through this for a bit. Goth S. Used guns. Oh, that's interesting. The victim was shot. Should send someone, at least send them. Ah, so Francis bought a gun. Wait a minute, she said beautiful. Could it be Loretta, actually?
Do you remember a woman who came in recently and purchased a Derringer?
Oh, matter of fact, I do, sir. We don't get women in here very often, especially not alone. And I particularly remember that one because she was so pretty and, she looked like she really knew how to have a good time, if you'll pardon the expression.
Do you remember her name?
I should say I do. She repeated it twice whilst I was filling out the order form. Seems like it was very important to her that I get her name right. Let me see, it was, Frances, no, Les, well, it was Frances something or other, sir.
That can't be right. Frances was a plain girl. Loretta must have bought the gun. I think we know who the killer is.
Hear ye, hear ye. The Queen's Court now stands in order. Mr. Holmes, I understand you've been looking into the murder of Guy Clarendon.
That is correct, my lord.
Would you be so kind as to tell the court who killed Mr. Clarendon?
Certainly, my lord.
The one who bought the gun, I believe. I believe Loretta Nolan.
I see. And what was Loretta Nolan's motive for killing Mr. Clarendon?
She certainly wasn't jealous. I'm going to say that one. It seems like her match her personality.
Greed. Pure and simple. Now, have you determined why Frances Nolan went to Halliday's?
I have, my lord.
Please inform the court.
Well, she doesn't remember anything. She either blacked out on her own, but as that's not an option here, I'm going to say she was hypnotized.
Not a sisterly thing to do at all. Is there anything else you wish to report to the court?
Yes, my lord. I believe we've also solved the case of the society burglar.
You don't say. Who is the guilty party?
Near as I can tell, someone who is interested in pranks and also was cut off by his
Guy
father.
Clarendon was straight from the upper crust. Why ever would he turn to a life of crime? Well, you've done an admirable job in resolving this mystery. I'd say you're on a par with just about any other armchair detective out there. I would suggest, however, that you rethink this case again, thereby improving your sleuthing skills.
Perhaps I will. Perhaps anyone who watches
We must be
this.
slipping, my dear Holmes. But in any event, I'm breathing easier. At least we got our men.
Or woman.
Well, Watson, we should be very pleased with ourselves on this one.
Yes, indeed, Holmes.
2 cases solved for Scotland Yard, though I doubt that Lestrade will consider himself in our debt.
2?
Yes, indeed. First, the society burglar. Clarendon was £7,000 in debt to the gambler Kilgore. Unfortunately, he was in his father's bad graces and he was flat broke.
Do you suppose Kilgore sent Bullock around to rough Clarendon up?
Good deduction, Watson. You're learning. That's why he moved into Halliday's, to escape Gus Bullock.
And to pay off his debts, he took to burglary.
Right you are. He acquired a black sweater, trousers, and a pair of black canvas shoes so as not to be seen or heard in the dead of night.
That's what the shoes
He
were
chose
about.
victims of his own class, whose social comings and goings he knew well, and whose homes he'd visited often.
I still don't understand why, after he'd settled in at Halliday's, he changed rooms.
Elementary, my dear Watson. To be at the back of the hotel with a vine-covered trellis conveniently leading in and out of his bedroom window.
Quite so. Positively clever of you.
May I continue?
Athletic.
Oh, please do.
On the 1st of June, Bullock tracked Clarendon down and confronted him in the lobby. Clarendon paid him the £5,000 that was given to him by his father.
He still owed Kilgore £2,000. And that was the same evening the society burglar struck for the first time.
So pleased you've been paying attention, Watson. Soon after that, Clarendon, Kilgore, and Calvin Leach, a known trafficker in stolen goods, were seen together. Notice, if you will, that 1/2 the value of the first 3 society burglaries is equal to £2,000. Half the value being the price normally paid by Calvin Leach for stolen goods. Notice also that this same amount is equal to the balance of Clarendon's debt to Kilgore.
Fascinating. So with his new vocation, Clarendon now had an easy source of income.
Quite so, as his succeeding bank transactions evidence. On the day after each of the next 3 burglaries, Clarendon made deposits. Everything went along swimmingly, and by June 30th, his debt was paid.
But the tiara was stolen July 1st.
Yes, Watson. Apparently, young Clarendon thought he'd found himself a new vocation. He might have lasted longer at it if he'd chosen something else to steal.
Whatever do you mean, Holmes?
Loretta Nolan's delusion that she was born of royal parentage proved to be his undoing.
If she took it, how did she manage? No one saw her enter or leave.
She came and went the same way Clarendon did, via the trellis. She was armed with a derringer purchased at Escott's in her sister's name. Clarendon returned from his night's work and poured 2 glasses of wine in celebration. That's when Loretta Nolan shot him and took the tiara.
How wicked of her.
Not nearly as wicked as what she did next.
What?
She went to her sister Frances's home and hypnotized her. She then proceeded to instruct her to go to Clarendon's room with the derringer and fire it into the ceiling.
Incriminate her own sister? But why?
If we could determine that precisely, we could start our own institute.
Sick mind, no doubt. But tell me, Holmes, how did Clarendon know the precise locations of each of his victims' jewels?
Excellent question, Watson. Although there is no clear-cut evidence for this, I can only assume that Loretta Nolan must have been in on it too. The only way Clarendon could have known the locations of the jewels was if the victims themselves had told him where to look. None of them recalls having told anyone, but in fact they did tell someone.
Who?
Loretta Nolan. She managed to hypnotize each of the ladies whose jewels were stolen and got them to reveal the precise locations of the family treasures.
And left them with no memory of having done so.
Precisely.
Astounding, Holmes.
Elementary, my dear Watson.
Elementary. Right on the money about that one. Well, that was fun. I wish you all a very good night. I hope you have enjoyed the stream.